Now, in chapter 7, we are going to discuss about the lifelines of national economy. The lifelines of national economy means the most important organs for our national economy. As in our body parts, how we have the blood veins which carry the blood from every corner to the heart, that brings the blood from every corner of our body to the heart to get connected. In the same way, for our national economy to develop, nowadays transport is playing a very large role. Transport, if you remember about transport, prior to the 18th century, before the discovery of science and invention or modern technology, earlier we used to restrain ourselves to few villages, few regions, because that time traveling was a very difficult task. But as the science and technology has advanced, today we have large number of transport facilities increasing, and today transportation has become very easy task that has made the world to be a global village. Earlier we used to have difficulty to travel from one corner to the other corner of a state or a country, but as the time passed, with the inventions of modernization of transport system, today you have various means of transport, the fastest means of transport, which can make us to understand, or which can make us to travel very fast and very quickly to reach our destinations. Earlier, traveling from one continent to another continent was a dream. Many people lost their lives in the journey of this. When Vasco da Gama started his journey to discover a sea route to India, he started his journey with around some 3,000 people, but he was able to reach back to his home destination with a few hundreds of people. He started in 2 ships, but he was able to get back only in 1 ship. So there are really practical problems, and it took nearly 3 to 4 years for him to travel, to rediscover, and again to get back. But today, within a span of hours, we can definitely get back to the previous destinations. In this way, we can definitely try to get some good approaches towards transport. Today, actually, the entire world has become a global village. Today, you can travel from one corner to another corner, any place with fastest means of communication. So, transportation is very important, because if transportation facilities are provided, the transport of the raw materials becomes very easy. Once the transportation is provided, the transportation gets the raw materials transferring from one place to another place very easy. Yes, people transportation also is very important, but at the same time, when it comes to the raw material transport, raw material getting transported from one region to another region is a very vital important aspect of the modern day, because without the raw material getting transported, any industry cannot develop. Without having industries, any country cannot develop. So in order to see the development of a nation, you need to have more number of factories, more number of industries, for which a very good transport network is highly important. So if you have the transport, well, the raw material transportation becomes easy, which gives a boom for industries or factories. So once the industries and the factories are getting its boom, and finally it reaches to its destination, then the country will automatically come into the lines of progress. Once a large number of industries, large number of factories are established in the country with good transport system, it automatically provides employment for the people. This brings the employment opportunities. So once the roads network is laid down, the transportation has developed, that automatically brings factories. From factories we get the raw materials available to the people, and from the place where the raw materials have to be carried to the factory and factory to the marketplace, so the final destinations, and from then we automatically get the employment opportunities. Once the employment opportunities are generated for the people to work, instead of getting dependent on the regular basic occupations like agriculture, people get transformed from the basic structure of occupations to the secondary category of occupations where industries and factories are coming in that category. Then automatically the standard of living of the people becomes stable and higher than the previous levels. And it also gets another type of employment called transport services. We get various kind of auto rickshaws, various kind of buses, public transport, private transport, tax, cabs. All these will also generate the transport services. This is also another source of employment opportunities which are provided to the people in regards to transport. So when transport is developing, automatically the infrastructure of the road will develop. Then it also brings that connectivity between the interior lands to the far off places. And when interior lands and the far off places, the factory destinations are coming closer, which will generate employment opportunities for the people and also generate the transport services. Once the factories are established, they started to give opportunities for the people in terms of employment, and in order to get the final product outside, marketing will develop, people's inhabitation will develop, automatically that country will start to progress. So if a country needs to get its progression, if a country needs to develop, automatically it leads to development when we have a good transport system. That's the reason why it is rightly remarked as the lifelines of national economy. Any country to be developed, any country to achieve its target of development, any country to become modernized, the basic requirement for it is that they should have perfect transport system. It may be in the form of roadways, it may be in the form of railways, it may be in the form of waterways, it may be in the form of airways. So today we have different means of transport, starting from the broad categorization, as we just now discussed, that any country to attain its progress, any country to develop, it needs basic development of transport. When the basic development of transport is concerned, it is for land, water and air are three major bifurcations of the different transport systems available on this earth. The different compulsory transportation systems which we are following right now in the present generation can be categorized into land, water and air. In the land, again we have the categorization like road, rail and pipelines. So when we talk about the road, on the road we have 2-laner roads, one-way roads, 4-laner roads, 6-laner roads and even 8-laner roads, which are providing good transportation facilities. India also constructed the Golden Quadrilateral connecting the 4 metropolitan cities, which has given a large boom for the transportation system all over India. So in the same way, the transportation by road has given access in the interior lands from the inner land to get the resources outside, and the same way connect the people from the far off places to the nearby places, far off cities to the nearby capital cities. So it has made a connectivity point through roadways. Road vehicles are, as we all know, the public transport is there, private transport is there. Public transport, we have the Road Transport Corporation buses running across all over the country. We have private cabs, private individual vehicles. All these things come under the category of road transport. And moving on to rail. When it comes to the rail transport, in rail, we all know that Indian Railways is the largest railway network in the entire world, which has been having more than 67,000 kilometers of length all across India. So every day we have millions of people traveling, and also worth of crores of rupees of goods being carried away by the Indian Railways. So rail network has increased its importance in the past 5 decades on a larger scale. Prior to this, the Britishers who initially established the rail network in 1853, the first railway line was laid from Mumbai to Thane in 1853, which gave, actually their intention was to carry the raw materials from the interior land areas to the port areas. That was their main target. But as the time passed on, they realized and they improved the network, and today India is having the largest railway network. And coming to understand the pipelines, through pipelines we can transport oils, we can transport water, whatever is required in a closed circuit we can transport that through the pipelines. In India we don't have much pipeline network when it comes to roadways and railways in competition. Railways and roadways are dominant on the land transport system for India. And coming to water, again in water we have two types. One is inland, the next is overseas. Inland waterways and the overseas waterways. Inland waterways are the waterways which connect the places within the country is called inland waterways. Which connects our country to the other countries is called as overseas waterways. India has having a large inland as well as overseas network because India is a naturally located peninsula and we have many perennial rivers flowing in the northern India as well as in the southern India. So we have good connectivity with the interior land parts through water as well as overseas. India is bounded by Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean in the southern part, western part, while in the eastern part, which has been a strategic location to have passing through from Africa to Asia and also to US. So towards the west and towards the east we have good connectivity through waterways. So overseas trade is also playing a very good advantage for Indians. India is also having a very good overseas trade and inland waterways. And coming to the lastest means of transport, that is airways. In airways again we have domestic and international. Domestic means from the capital city to the other state's capital, from the national capital region to the other state's capital, from the other cities connecting flights to the national capital is called domestic network or domestic flights. When it comes to the international, in the international we have connectivity from our national capital and the metropolitan cities to the other nations' capitals and the other important cities. From one country to another country is called international flight. So we have domestic flights as well as international flights. In domestic flights we have nearly 20 to 25 domestic airplanes, aerodromes, while international aerodromes we have nearly 6 international aerodromes. Even in Hyderabad we have an international aerodrome which is having a wide connectivity of transport, and that is the fastest means of transport of the modern days. Again in this we have the public as well as the private airliners carrying the passengers from one region to another region. So in this way India is having a large diversity of transport. Though India is having large diversity of physical divisions, large diversity in language, large diversity in culture, but still India has been playing a dominant role on the overall scenario what's happening, and this proves to be a very good when it comes to the transportation system of India. India is having a good road transport, rail transport, water overseas transport and domestic and international transport, covering India to be a very good place of transportation connectivity, which is a basic requirement for any country to develop its industries and to make the things to travel, especially the raw materials from one corner to another corner, because that is a basic thing for the factories to develop. As I mentioned earlier, factories will develop only when we have a good transport system. Once the factories develop, automatically that starts to provide employment opportunities for its people, those are staying around. Once people start to get employment in the factories, then they started to change up their standard of living, because they are moving from the primary occupations to the secondary occupations, which adds up for their life and their standard of living would automatically go up. So these are the basic transportation requirements of a country and very important role it plays. That is the reason why it is rightly named as the lifelines of any country's national economy. Now let us know about the road transport system. In the transport, we already divided that the most important one is road transport. When it comes to road transport, India is one of the countries which is having largest road transport system, because India has nearly 2.3 million kilometers of road transport, good roads which are available and very good convenient for transport system. When in comparison with the road and rail, we have a very good positive advantage for roads than for rail, because in order to make a rail track, you need to make it with iron, which is very costly, but in order to make road, it is not so costly. So comparatively, making a road is very convenient and very less cost when compared to laying a railway track. That is the first major advantage what we have. The second major advantage what we have is it can traverse more. You can have ups and downs, you can have curves, you can make the vehicles to rotate, and you can have a good direction changes also according to your convenience and according to the land topographic changes what are present. But when it comes to rail, you cannot make the rail to go up and down, because when a rail moves up and down, it automatically slips off. So it's very difficult to maintain such kind of transport or traverse directions or any changes in the track routes, because it should go straight. It cannot turn regularly. It has to be turned at a certain angles. Whereas road, we can have various number of direction changes, turns. We can go fast. We can reduce the speed very easily. Whereas rail connectivity and all, it's very difficult. And moving to provide door-to-door services. Rail, we cannot provide door-to-door services. By road, you can connect every corner of India at less and affordable cost, covering all the regions as much as possible. That is the door-to-door coverage. And also loading and unloading of the things is very less cost when it is compared to the products what we have in our rail transport. For rail, you need to go to a particular spot, you need to do it and you need to get it. But when it comes to road, you can get the vehicle to your own place, you can load it and you can also unload it to your own favorite place or destination what you require. And also when it comes to have a link, road network acts as a link from the house destination to a rail network, a railway station, an airport or any water port or seaport. We need to have a good road transport system. So there are certain advantages for the road transport system. First, the cost is very less when compared to railways. We can have traverse or changes in the directions where we travel. We can provide door-to-door services. We can have loading and unloading at very less cost. At the same time, we can also have a link to the rail, air or water destination points like railway station, airport and seaport, so that we can travel to that particular direction by using road. That is the important thing. And then coming to the Golden Quadrilateral. The Golden Quadrilateral is the massive project which was started by the government of BJP, which was headed by Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 1999 period, where he initiated this process of connecting north and south, east and west, where the traveling distance of time has to be reduced and we can have good connectivity between the mega cities and the other cities. So he started the Golden Quadrilateral connecting north and south from Delhi to Chennai. Via we have a road coming from Delhi to Mumbai, Mumbai to Chennai and Mumbai to Chennai, well as Chennai to, we also have Kolkata, Kolkata again connecting it to Delhi. So all the four mega metropolitan cities are connected using this quadrilateral, which is run by the National Highway Authority of India, NHAI, which is a 6-laner. It is a 6-laner and it has a good connectivity, and this is controlled by the government of India, Union Government of India, which was a very good step. And after this Golden Quadrilateral, we also have many national highways. The national highways are the highways which are connecting the state capitals to the national capital. Like for example, from Hyderabad, you can connect it to Delhi. The road which connects Hyderabad to Delhi is called a national highway. When we talked about the Golden Quadrilateral, you may get a doubt that Delhi and Mumbai, both are getting connected. Yes, but it is a part of connecting the four mega cities. But here we are discussing about all the other states' capitals getting connected with the national capital. There only 4 mega cities are connected. Here all the other cities are also connected to the national capital. That's why it is having National Highways Authority, and these are maintained by the Central Public Works Department, the CPWB. CPWD, and this also connects the north and south, east and west. The first and the historically famous road is the Sher Shah Suri Marg, which was laid from Delhi to Amritsar. This is the first national highway, or the number one. First, it is not in terms of area, or it's not in terms of something else. It is according to the ranking on the list of the national highways. The first rank has been given to the Sher Shah Suri Marg, which is connecting Delhi to Amritsar. After moving on from the national highways, we also have the state highways, the regions of the district headquarters, connecting them to the state capital. The national highways are connecting state capitals to the national capital, whereas coming to state highways, from the district headquarters to the state capital. These are maintained by the State Public Works Department in every state. And moving on to the next, district roads. These district roads are maintained by the Jilla Parishad. District roads are connecting the main headquarters of the district to the other towns and villages. That is called district roads. And we also have many other kinds of roads like village roads and the border roads and all these roads. The other important category of roads what we have is the border roads. The border roads are maintained by the Border Road Development Organization of Government of India, which was started in 1960, and we have this in the north and the northeastern states, where the frontiers of India are been having border roads, which has been a very complicated issue in the past 20 years, because we need to have a good clear demarcation of the road and the border issues also. So that's why the border roads are being maintained from 1960. And coming to the categorization of the roads are generally categorized on their basic nature, how are they made or how are they built. The roads are categorized into metalled and the unmetalled roads. Metal roads are the roads which are built with cement, concrete, and these are very strong roads and useful in the all weather climatic conditions. So a transport of road can be possible through these metal roads in the summer season, in the rainy season, and in the winter season. Well, as coming to the roads of these unmetalled roads are used only in the summer season and in the winter season, where they are not good or fit to use in the rainy season. They cannot be used in any rainy season because they are not done with cement or concrete or the bitumen of coal. So it cannot be able to do it in the rainy season because the mud roads and all get spoiled because of the heavy rains. And then moving on to the understanding the density. Density is generally we calculate for 1 square kilometer of region, number of people live is called the density of population. But when you talk about the road density, the length of the road laid for every 100 square kilometers is called national road density. The road density also varies from one state to the other state, because we all know that the topographical conditions are different from one state to the other state. For example, in Jammu and Kashmir, it is only 10 kilometers per 100. While it comes to the other regions, we have in Kerala, we have 375 kilometers, where it is very less in Jammu and Kashmir, very high in Kerala. Even the national average has been calculated, that is 75 kilometers is the national average for every 100 kilometers. But still, we need many number of national highways. The roads which we have in our cities are also very old roads, and they are almost always congested with the heavy traffic. We need to have new bridges, new culverts which need to be rebuilt. Almost all the bridges and the culverts what we have today are the old ones and which need to be replaced as soon as possible. So in this way, roadways are also having some changes to be required, and national highways, more number of national highways have to be built. So the road transport, yes, it is very less affordable cost. It can do door-to-door service, loading and unloading is at very less cost. But still, we need to have more number of national highways, we need to have more number of transport facilities, we need to have more number of bridges and also flyovers, so that the transportation gets easy and people do not get stuck in the traffic. That's from the roadways. Now let's move on to the railways. Now moving on to railway network. In the railways, we all know that yes, roadways have various advantages, less affordable cost in comparative to the railways, but the transportation convenience is very good. You can travel very fast. When you're traveling for long distances, most of the people prefer railway network. That's the reason why in India the principal mode of transportation is railways. Railway network has been widespread, covering passengers on one side and the freight on the other side. It has been transporting millions of people every day, along with million tons of goods also every day. So roadways have its own advantages, but railways has been a key mode of transport for a common man, to the costliest commodities also to be transported. Even animals which need to be transported from one corner to the other corner of the country used to be transported using the railways. The other major advantages or the key factors for what we use railway network is the business trips. Any people who are having their business trips, they move on to railways. If anyone is having a sightseeing proposal, they go on for railway network. If anyone is planning for a pilgrimage, they take the use of railway network. And railways have been an integrating force from the past 150 years. They have been integrating north to south, east to far of the west, where it has been a very difficult task for the roadways to connect. Yes, there are some practical difficulties, but still Indian railways are making a remarkable role in order to gather all the Indians, in order to make possible for all the people to travel from one region to another region as comfortable as possible. And moving on to understand the statistics of the Indian railways. Indian railways are having nearly 7,031 stations. Out of the 7,031 stations, they have a length of the route covered for 63,221 kilometers. And then moving on to the number of locomotives what the Indian Railways own. There are 7,817 locomotives, and among those 7,817 locomotives, we have passengers 5,321 passenger services locomotives and 4,904 coaches which are used for other services, and we also have 170 wagons which is providing transportation of the goods from one corner to another corner. And this is as per the statistics of the data available for us on March 31st 2004 in the railway budget. But today it's a decade ago and now we are a decade ahead, so the number might have been changed, but still it shows for us how significant and how long and how important they are giving for the people and the public transport as well as for the goods transport. And now the Indian railways are being categorized into 16 zones, whereas there are again certain issues for Indian railways to develop, that is the physiographic problems. When it is located in a hilly region, it is very difficult to lay a railway track there. When it comes to the economic issues, it has been a very costly affair to lay a railway track for 100 kilometers. You need to have the entire length of the track to be built with the iron and steel blendings and all, which is very costly. And administrative convenience, again we have the administrative issues coming under the category of state issues as well as the national borders. And then we also have a large number of rivers in the north and the northeastern India, which have been a serious obstacle because you need to build more number of bridges to have fill the gap, otherwise you cannot have the railway network there. That has been a serious obstacle there. Hilly terrain regions, when the hill slopes and terrain regions are coming, it has been not possible to rail the railway tracks there. Sandy plains, the sandy plains of Rajasthan, the sandy plains of Gujarat, it has been a difficult task to lay the sandy tracks on the sand plains. And then mountain regions, nearby to the mountain regions or far of the mountain regions also we find difficult because the mountain regions effects are putting it difficult. That too in the western coast, when we have the Sahyadri mountain ranges, it has been a very difficult task and it has been a very complicated task to complete the Konkan coast, the Konkan zone of railway zone which has been laid. And then the issue of difficulty of connecting people from the west to the upper to the lower part of the west, I mean like north to the northwest and southwest, it has been a very difficult task. Later they were able to lay it down and it has made the transport very easy for the people available there. And then we also have the landslides happening when the land is weak and slides happen that make the tracks to sink down. That is another major difficult task. And the major other issues, though railways has been successful to a very large extent, even today many people travel in the railways without tickets, which has been a huge loss economically for the Indian railways. And we also have thefts and damaging the Indian railway property, where people do not feel that it is their property. We feel that it is somebody else's property and they start to damage that one. And we also have a bad habit of pulling the chain of the railway net train which is running to stop that one, and they get on wherever they need. These are some of the issues which has to be ascertained and taken seriously, and we need to inculcate the habit that government property is nothing but public property, which means our own property. We are not doing anything benefit for other people by safeguarding our public property. This kind of attitude and culture has to be developed, and Indian railways has been a major transport system for all the Indians from north to south and east to west, with various number of locomotives with integrating force. It is acting like a bonding force between various people, and we have the freights, passengers all using the railway network. We have also have various issues like people traveling without ticket, theft and damaging. Security issues are also coming up nowadays in the trains, and we also have the habit of people pulling the chains and stopping the trains wherever they want. These all have to be questioned seriously, and we need to inculcate a good system of culture so that we can have safe and also earn profits for Indian railways. Now moving on to understand about the pipelines. Pipelines in India, prior to this, they were used to transport water to the cities. Afterwards, the technology has developed, and now we are using to transport crude oil using the pipelines, then natural gas, and now we also can transport the solid materials, making them slurry and using the pipelines. The negative effects are like, initially when you start a pipeline, it is basically very costly. So initial investment to make a pipeline is really very costly, but later on, afterwards, you can transport any item at very less cost without any loss, and the maintenance would be minimal. These are the positive edges of pipelines. Pipelines were initially used to transport water in the cities, but later, with the growth of technology and advancements, we are now using to transport crude oils and natural gas, and now solids, slurry. When you make the solids to be slurry, automatically you can make them to transport through the pipeline. So we can also transport water, we can transport oil, we can transport gas, we can transport the solids by making them slurry items. And then the investment maybe initially to make a pipeline was costly, but later the loss would be very less, the delay would be very less, because we do not have any traffic issues there, you do not have any vehicle delays, you do not have anybody not present to take all these things, but directly you can transport any material like water, petrol, gas, natural gas, or the usable solids, also making them slurry and transport them. And in India we have nearly 3 important networks of pipelines in India. One is from Assam to Kanpur, where you transport the petroleum crude oil. Then Salia to Punjab, we transport again the petroleum crude oil. And now we also have gas, Hazaria to Jagdishpur. The Hazaria to Jagdishpur is a pipeline which is transporting gas through this. So we are also having a plan to get pipeline from petrol from Iran to India via through the states of Afghanistan, Pakistan and India. So we are also having a pipeline project which is a fastest means of transport without any delays, without any loss which can be caused, and the transportation also can be, initially it may be costly as we discussed earlier, but once the pipeline has been implemented and started functioning, it makes the work very fast and very effectively in regards to delivery and in regards to shipment of the product. So it's very important to have a good connectivity of pipeline networks which can transport oil, water, gas and any other solids which are made into the slurry projects. In India we have 3 major important networks like covering Assam to Kanpur, Assam in the northeast to Kanpur in UP, Salia and Punjab, Haryana to Punjab regions, and gas Hazaria to Jagdishpur in the northern parts, where it is very important and very useful for transferring natural crude oils and also the natural gas. Now, let us learn about the waterways. The waterways, we all know that mankind, especially India, is a land where Indian seamen have traveled from one corner to other corner of India using the waterways, especially from the west coast to the entire end of the east coast, where we have a long stretch of long waterway boundary where India is having sharing with Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal. The wave back from the ancient period onwards, Indian seamen have moved and spread the Indian culture and Indian trade in the nearby places and also to far off places in the west. We have historical inscriptions revealing for us that India had relations with the Babylon in the past, in the ancient history. So, it is not a new means of transport for the Indians. Most of the trade has been done by the waterways in the ancient period as well as in the modern period. Waterways are the most efficient and environmental friendly when it comes to comparison with the airways or the other means of transport. And moving on to understand why waterways plays a vital role in any country's economy is that it is the cheapest means of transport available for us in the entire world. We also have fuel efficient and also environmental friendly, that is a special attitude. And in India we have nearly 14,500 kilometers of length and 3,700 kilometers of this 14,500 is navigable for the mechanized boats, where we can use transport for us in a very convenient way. In the entire India we have many ways where we have the water connectivity on a larger scale, and so we have categorized them into national waterways. In India we have many national waterways. Most important among them is the national waterway number 1, which is from Allahabad to Haldia. Then Allahabad to Haldia is over the river Ganga, and the next second national waterway is from Sadia to Dubri, that is from Brahmaputra in the second national waterway, and the third one is the west coast of Kerala to Kaman, that is the third waterway. Well, we also have Krishna, Godavari, Buckingham Canal, Damodar Valley Corporation Canal. All these are the important national waterways in India which play a very vital role in the Indian trade. The river valleys of 95% of the Indian trade has been carried through the different waterways what we have, and it is also a very environmental friendly, low efficient cost of transport. You can transport bulk amount of goods using the waterway, which is the cheapest means of transport from the ancient period to the modern period. Today we have huge number of vessels coming up which can carry the crude oil in larger scale, which can carry the large goods which are very heavy goods that can be transported from the one corner to the other corner of the world at very less affordable cost is the waterways. So in any country's development, waterways play a very vital role, because using the waterways you can have a good trade relations with one country to the other country, wherein the huge transport has been carried out by using the waterways. These waterways are again categorized into major seaports and the minor seaports. Let's find out them. As we have the different major and the minor seaports, now let us know about the major seaports. In India, in the entire stretch of India, we have 7,516.6 kilometers of the entire land having the coastal belt. So starting from Gujarat till the Bay of Bengal region, ending with Bangladesh border, West Bengal, where we are having a length of 7,516.6 kilometers. In this we have 12 major ports and 181 medium and minor ports. These 12 major ports are playing a very important role in India's trade with the other countries, especially in regards to exports and imports. In India, we have 95% of the India's foreign trade is being carried by these 12 major seaports. These 12 major seaports are carrying the entire India's maximum amount of trade, which is foreign trade. And in the wake of Karachi, when India and Pakistan got bifurcated and divided, we lost Karachi to Pakistan. So immediately we need to have an alternative to compensate the transports when it comes to Rajasthan, Punjab and the Gujarat region. So we developed the Kandla in Kachach to have a port on the western coast, and then this is also a special significance for the Kandla port is that it is a tidal port wherein it moves out with the heavy energy. We also get heavy energy, so it provides good transport for the vessels to come in, and loading and the unloading work gets easier for us. And then moving on to understand the largest port in India. The largest port in India is a Mumbai port. The Mumbai is the largest, spacious and naturally well locked natural harbor in India, where we have this one located at the prime location wherein you can move from Mumbai to the west or also towards the east. So it also got the strategic importance for the Mumbai, wherein most of the Indian trade for textiles, for iron ore, petroleum, everything has been carried from Mumbai. Day by day the rush of the Mumbai is been increasing, so the Jawaharlal Nehru port has been added to decongest the heavy crowd of vessels towards the Mumbai, but still Mumbai stands at the very busiest port in India. And then we also have, moving on to the down west, Marmagao port, wherein the iron ore has been exported from the Marmagao port. And moving on to the complete down to the south, Tuticorin, where in Tamil Nadu, where we have the Tuticorin port, where in Chennai is the oldest artificial port which was being built. This takes the second place in India among the major ports, because Mumbai is standing at the first, wherein Chennai at the second. And then coming to the east, we also have in the east Visakhapatnam, which also falls in the state of Andhra Pradesh, wherein along with Andhra Pradesh we have in the Orissa coast Paradeep and Kolkata. We also have the busiest port. Well, in order to compensate the heavy vessels movement towards the Kolkata, we also had to take another more nearby port, that is Haldia port, are being established. So waterways are playing a very vital role in the Indian trade, especially the Indian exports and imports. 95% of the Indian exports and imports regarding crude oil, iron ore, petroleum, whatever products we take, that all are being carried by the 12 major seaports, starting heading with the ranking 1 with Mumbai till all the 181 minor ports. We also have the lagoon water back efforts also at the port areas, where we also have diverse effects of water, but still most of the Indian trade is completely dependent on waterways, because it is the cheapest means of transport when in comparison with the airways. So waterways is the best, cheapest, fuel efficient and also safe to carry large amount of trade, bulk goods on a larger scale. Now moving on to understand about the most fastest means of transport, that is airways. Airways has been the most fastest means of transport. We have discussed about the roadways, we have discussed about the waterways, but the most fastest, most comfortable and most quick and easily accessible one is airways. Why I mentioned it as the most fastest and more comfortable is, airways is the only way where you don't find any traffic. You can fly in the air and you can reach the destination even if it is of thousands of kilometers away also. Within a span of hours of time you can reach to your destinations with a safe location. And also we also have prestigious places where, like mountain terrains or hilly terrains or riverbed regions in the northern regions, where it is very difficult to lay the roads or the railway tracks. It has been made accessible only because of the airways. And we also have the regions like mountains, deserts, dense forest, which have been a part and parcel of India's diverse culture. So in order to get access of all these things, we feel it very comfortable usage of the airways, especially when it comes to the northeastern parts. The northeastern parts got access to the common people to the other parts of the world, especially to the India only when it comes to the middle central India or North India or the other corners of India. It has made a special provision to those people to travel through air at the affordable cost, because you cannot lay a road where you have many hilly track regions, and we also have dense forests, and we have Brahmaputra river flowing and continuously having floods. So railway tracks cannot be laid, road cannot be built. So all these practical problems are there, and these Air India has been nationalized in 1953, wherein Air India provides services from India to the other nations internationally. We also have subsidiary airlines of Indian Airlines, which provides domestic airlines for the local needs, and we also have Pawan Hans helicopters, which provide the network for the ONGC people to do their offshore assessments of getting the oil products outside. But still, the cost of airways is little bit higher when compared to roadways and railways or waterways, because in airways you need to effort more, you go fast but you need to effort more, and it's only in the northeastern states where a common man can afford to certain extent. Special provisions are made to make it accessible to the common people in the northeastern regions, whereas in the other corners of India we do not find any region where you can make it affordable to common man. It is very far away from the reach of the common man. So airways have to reach to the common man, then only it can be made as the fastest, easier, comfortable, accessible mode of transport at the affordable cost of the common man. If a common man cannot afford this one, definitely it is under the category of the privileged classes people only. So definitely we cannot consider this as a public transport. So we can only call it as a privileged means of transport. So in order to change this privileged means of transport to public transport, government has to take certain steps and bring down the cost of transport which has been incurred from the common people has to be reduced, so that it could be accessible easily to the common people also to use these airways of transport. The word communication itself reveals for us that expressing your feelings, it may be in the form of physical actions, it may be verbal, it may be written, but prior to this, communication also represents communicating from one region to another region. Passing the information from one place to another place is also called communication. Nowadays we are using the word like communication skills, but prior to this, world has seen an age where communication efforts are very less. Earlier, pigeons used to be the agents which carry the information from one person to the other person. Later, the situations have changed. So when the situations have changed, we have the advancement of technology coming in. We have the advancement of the other technological innovations which have changed the entire mode of communication for us. Let us see the change. We have seen from the pigeon communication, today you can send an SMS or a mail, within a second it can be reached to the other person whom you want to make it, or within a second you can call them and you can talk them. Today we have increase or improvement in the personal communications. Today you can sit in any corner of the world and you can call to the other person who is in the right opposite direction of your corner of the world. So prior to this, we can only communicate with people at 100 feet distance or by writing letters. But today you can communicate very effectively, very clearly, whatever you want to say at very fast rate using the modern means of mobile network, and then that comes under the category of personal communication. At the same time, today you can communicate any information very fast to millions of people at a single stroke. That is called mass communication. Communicating information to a large number of people at the same time from the same place is called mass communication, which means you can communicate at a public forum and that information will be reached to millions of people at the same time. Example, you talk anything on radio, the information can be crossed to millions of people. When once you are speaking, that can be heard by many millions of people. In the same way, TV channels, television network, satellite network, nowadays you have social media networking sites. All these things have brought under the category of mass communication to improve on a larger scale. And now, coming to the communication of Indian postal system, the official system. The Indian postal system has two classes of communication. One is the first class communication and the second class communication. The first class communication falls under the category of cards and envelopes, whereas the second class communication comes with the books and newspapers. So all the books which are registered, all the newspapers which are registered, or the periodical journals which are registered under the postal is coming under the category of second class mails. When the first class mails, you have all the cards and envelopes what we write to our friends, and all this comes under this. And in order to improvise the communication network and to reach to large number of people at very fast rate whatever you want to send, the postal system has brought certain channels for us to make the information pass very soon. The channels are 6 in number. First one is Rajdhani channel, second one Metro channel, third one Green channel, Fourth, business channel. 5, bulk mail channel. 6, periodical channel. First, Rajdhani. Second, Metro. 3, green channel. 4, business channel. 5, bulk mail channel. 6, periodical channel. These all channels will ensure that whatever you pass the information, that passes on through very quickly, either in the form of books, mails, whatever it is. And then we also have nowadays the standard coding system. From one region to another region, you can use the STD codes and make available of communication within the country on 24-hour basis, so that you can communicate with your friends, with your family members, anybody from any corner at very fast rate using the STD codes. In the same way, you can communicate people from one country to another country also at very fast rate using this ISD network. And the newspapers, movies have made a large impact of change of communication. Earlier, communication was limited to one-to-one communication or one-to-many communication. Today, newspapers are playing a very vital role. They are communicating any information very rapidly and very fastly. And leaving aside the newspapers and television channels, today we have the most powerful social media is movies. Movies are made in bulk in number in India. Especially India is the largest Hindi movie producers in the world. India produces the average 1,000 movies per annum, which is a very huge number, and it doesn't have any other country in competition in producing so many movies of a particular language. And India produces 1,000 movies, and so in order to ensure that it is not raising any kind of anti-communal feelings or anti-religious feelings or anti-national feelings, we have a censor board to check what is being telecasted, what is being picturized in the movie, how are the actions played in the movie, are they hurting anyone's religious sentiments. All these things are checked and verified by the censor board, and a central certification is issued by the Central Board of Film Authority, so that the movies would not be hurting any kind of diversified culture nature of India. So like this, communication has been a very effective means, and communication has seen a rapid change from the past 100 years, where we never know what is a phone, but today everybody in India owns a mobile phone, where it is a great change which has occurred in communication network in India. Now moving on to understand about the international trade. Trade is a combination of exchange of imports and exports. Any country cannot remain as isolated as it remained in the previous or in the ancient period. Today, every country needs to exchange its products with other countries wherein it falls it in surplus. At the same time, it needs to import the products where it falls in the scarcity of the products. So, a combination of exporting the surplus products and importing the less resources is a combination of trade. When it comes to trade, the exchange of goods is a simple definition of trade. Exchange of goods between two different countries is called international trade. Exchanging of goods between two different states is called international trade when it comes between two different countries. In a civics term, states stand for different countries. In the same way, when we talk about two different countries having their trades, obviously it would have the influence on the local trade. The trade which is happening between a village to another village, a town to another town, a city to another city, a state to another state, and then a nation to another nation. All these are interlinked to have trade relations. When a trade is in prosperous, when whatever we have in excess or surplus, we start to export to other countries where they are in need. And in the same way, what we don't have extra sufficient for us, that we need to import from the other countries. So the export and import automatically makes a country to be economically prosper. That's the reason why trade has been considered as a key factor to identify, or a basic index to identify whether a country is in progress or not. These all factors would definitely help us to understand whether a country is progressing or not. But there should be a clear-cut balance to have a country's clear progress. When exports and imports are combinedly called trade, if exports are increasing, that is a good sign of balanced trade. But when imports are increasing and exports are coming down, that is an unbalanced trade. It should have a balanced trade. That is the most important criteria to say whether a country is developing or not. And moving on to India, to understand whether India imports or exports more. India imports most of the petroleum products, pearls, precious stones, inorganic chemicals, coal, and other these products. And India is now turning into a software giant, where India have a huge number of the software professionals. India develops a larger number of applications and serves the entire world. India has been renowned for its software solutions. So now India is not only exporting and importing the products which we get bilaterally, but we are also exporting the technology what we are having, that is the IT. India is also exporting IT, wherein we have the percentages from 39% of the gold and the crude oil, and all these things are being imported from the other countries, whereas we are also exporting 70 to 80% of the information technology in the entire world has been delivered from our country. That is a special privilege what India achieved in a very short span from 20th century starting. In 1990s to 20th century, India turned to be a great giant with providing n number of solutions for the IT professionals. So in this way, international trade is a combination of exchange of goods between two different countries. Trade consists of local trade, state trade, village trade, town to town trade, all together country to country trade. Trade significance is that a country will prosper if there is a positive trade. When do we say it is a positive trade? When the exports are high and the imports are minimum, it is called positive trade. When the exports are low and imports are high, it is called unbalanced or the negative trade. India exports most of its gold, crude oil, pearls, gemstones or precious stones and inorganic chemicals, coal from the other countries. India exports most of its software, IT products and all. So India is at a very good index of trade. So India is a prospering country and economically India is very strong. Moving on to understand about the tourism as a trade. We have discussed that there is a trade import and export. But when it comes to tourism as a trade, in the past 3 decades, the number of people who are paying the visit to our country has been increased on a larger scale. It is 23.5% of the foreign tourists started to pay visit to India, which has been bringing India a currency of nearly 21,828 crores, which is not a less amount. And then 2.6 million people have paid their visits to India in the past years, and 15 million people are directly engaged, employed in the tourism industry, which resulted in providing a larger scale of employment through service sector. And it's also promoting the national integration, because people from various corners move one corner to another corner in order to identify their new places and also to understand what is actually India is. And then it also gives a chance for the international visitors, foreign nationalists, to know about Indian culture and Indian heritage. It gives an international understanding for them. And then the key identified places where large number of tourists pay their visit is Rajasthan, Goa, Jammu and Kashmir, some of the temple towns of South India, well as the northeastern states. Because of the Himalayas, northeastern states are fantastic states. They are also known as seven sister states, but still because of the obstacles of the Himalayas, they are not able to get explored, where they have a large potential of tourism, but still they need to overcome all these hurdles. So our tourism industry needs more number of encouragements from the government side, and also to provide better facilities, whatever is required for the tourists to come and avail them, so that the income what we are getting from the foreign tourists would definitely add on to our country's GDP, and very soon it turns into a very larger industry. Whereas it's not only some of the states like of North India like Rajasthan, Jammu and Kashmir or Punjab, or some of the states of South India like Goa, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Kerala, but also the entire India in states like Gujarat and northeastern states, where we have natural fantastic beauty, but because of some obstacles of the Himalayas being existing there, it is not been good transport facilities provided, wherein if we can afford to get good transport facilities, definitely it would be a very beautiful tourist spot, and all the northeastern states or the seven sister states would get huge income for us from the foreign nationals whoever is interested to look at those places. So all these things are need to come up, and if we can focus on all these things, we can definitely assure that the tourism industry would definitely have a very bright future, and the most upcoming industry is the tourism industry. So, in this unit, we have discussed about what is the importance of transport, how the transportation has been categorized into roadways or the landways, waterways, airways. The landways are again recategorized into road, rail, and then we also have the waterways getting laid into inland and the overseas, well as air, domestic and the international. So all the different issues of roadways or waterways, railways, inland waterways, overseas and then airways, positives and negatives have been discussed. Then afterwards, communication network, how did the communication network has emerged in the past 50 years in India, and then we discussed about the trade relations, how did the trade system develop in India, what are the major imports, what are the major exports, and then how did India develop into a software giant. And later on, to conclude, we have also taken up the upcoming industry, tourism industry, wherein it has a large potential. We're having some limited obstacles. If those obstacles are being removed, definitely the upcoming industry would have a very, very bright future ahead. This is a brief synopsis of the entire lesson.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.